entering fantasy football season. These are quarterbacks that I think are going to be bust this season. The first guy, Daniel Jones of the New York Giants. So Daniel Jones, he got paid the big money this offseason after he struggled the first 3-4 years of his NFL career, but last year leading the Giants to a wild card berth in the second round of the playoffs after upsetting the Minnesota Vikings in the first round. So last year, 3,200, 5 yards, 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 120 rush attempts, 708 yards, and 7 touchdowns. So Daniel Jones, second half of the year, he was running the football like a wild man, but he took a lot of big hits. And this year, I think this Giant team now with the additions at wide receiver, Hyatt they added in the NFL draft. You got Paris Campbell, Cole Beasley in free agency, traded for Darren Waller, that they're going to try to be more of a pass-happy team in terms of Daniel Jones dropping back and throwing instead of him running a lot. But Saquon Barkley's still going to get his, especially on that franchise tag. I think Barkley's going to get anywhere from 275 touches to the 325 range here this season. So Daniel Jones last year, that rushing really saved him in fantasy football, and that's what really made him a factor this season. A lot of good quarterbacks once again this year. I don't know if Jones is going to be a top 12 quarterback in terms of fantasy points or just efficiency. So right now, I see him going in a lot of fantasy drafts. 11th, 12th round, here's Daniel Jones, which is still pretty decent value, but if you're going to go into a 12-team league with him as your starter, I think he's going to be a bust for fantasy owners, and they're going to be banking way too much on him running the football. But like I said, he has a lot of weapons this year that he didn't have last season, where last year he pretty much had no choice but to run, where he had a lot of inexperienced wide receivers, and Richie James was pretty much his number one at points of the season. So right now, I think he's going to run less. He's not that great of a thrower of the football. And this year, I think he takes a little bit of a step back and won't crack the top 12 in fantasy points for quarterbacks. Next quarterback's Geno Smith of the Seattle Seahawks. So Geno last year, they were very confident, obviously, was a Seattle team, trading Russell Wilson away to the Denver Broncos and penciling Geno into the starting lineup from the get-go. And he had a great year, 4,282 pass yards, 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 366 rush yards, and a touchdown. So right now, last year, he was a top 10 quarterback easily in fantasy points was Geno Smith. But this season, I don't know if he's going to do it again. And I know they added more weapons to this offense with the rookie Smith, that wide receiver to go with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. I know they got Charbonnet, a running back, to go with Kenneth Walker. He's a big-time back as well coming out of college football. But this year, I think Geno, the league's going to catch on a little bit. And last year, a lot of ball games they did trail where he had no choice but to throw the football 40 or 50 times, where there was a lot of garbage time as well involved with that with Geno Smith. So right now, he's a quarterback as well, same range as Daniel Jones. He's been going for the most part, anywhere from the 10th to the 13th round range is Geno Smith. And if I'm going into the season with him as a starter, I'm still not going to be confident in 12-team leagues. Like, I'd rather have guys like Deshaun Watson this season. I'd rather have Tua, Anthony Richardson, because of his running of ability of possibly getting 800, 900 yards on the ground this season. I'd rather have than Geno Smith. Obviously, a Joe Burrow, guys early in the draft. Dak Prescott even would just pencil in a little bit over Geno Smith this year. So right now, after coming off a great year, getting his contract, he could have been a one-year wonder as Geno Smith. I know he was hungry, but now he got his deal, and we'll see if he could perform. But this season, I don't think he ends up in the top 12 in fantasy points at quarterback, and I think he's a bust in terms of that. The next quarterback, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. So Dak Prescott, he's a lot of these games where obviously he throws 4 or 5 touchdown ball games we see. But he's definitely been a stat padder over the last few seasons as Dak. And last year, we know he missed a handful of games with the thumb injury. So last season, 2,860 pass yards, 23 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, which obviously is a huge problem, 182 rush yards and a rushing touchdown. So Dak, he's got all the weapons this season. You got Brandon Cooks in the mix. You got Pollard now. He's going to be the main back over there. You got Deuce Vaughn they drafted, Ronald Jones, Malik Davis. So they got a lot of options in the backfield as well as this Dallas Cowboy team. But to add Brandon Cooks, another 1,000-yard receiver to a CeeDee Lamb. There's no excuses this season, but just so many bad interceptions and trying to fit into tight windows and into double teams is a problem for Dak Prescott. And like I said, last year there was some games he had 30, 35 fantasy points, and then the next week he had 8 to 12 fantasy points. He's been very inconsistent the last few seasons. This Dallas defense, they've been dominant. Where there's games, obviously, where Dak's not going to have to throw the football a whole lot, where he's only going to have 150, 200 yards and a touchdown or maybe two. So with those factors factoring in, and Dak Prescott still being drafted as an 8th or 9th round, or at late, even earliest as 7th round in fantasy drafts, I don't think he's a quarterback that's going to put up those elite numbers, and I don't think he finishes top 10 in fantasy points at the position. Like I said, I know he's got all the weapons, but this Cowboy team does have a good defense, and there could be a lot of ball games where it's a lot of running and stuff like that. So right now, with all those factors, I don't think Dak has a good season, and he's a quarterback I mentioned to avoid drafting, and now he's a quarterback that I think will be a bust this season. Quarterback that I think will be a bust this year is Bryce Young of the Carolina Panthers. So right now, Bryce Young, rookie year, obviously, going to a Carolina team, and there's not many weapons over there. They got an aging Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, who's bounced around over the last few seasons. He's on the roster as well. Hurst will be the starting tight end over there, with Miles Sanders being the running back. So right now on paper, a lot of guys have been in the league a few years, but not huge impact guys. Like DJ Moore, they traded him away to get up into the draft here for Bryce Young. And Bryce Young, like I said, there's going to be growing pains. Not a lot of weapons on this Carolina Panther team. For Dynasty and Keeper Leagues even as well, I'm not going to go draft Bryce Young that early in those drafts. So Bryce Young this season, there's going to be growing pains, like I said. We know he's an athletic quarterback. Top pick for a reason, obviously, in the NFL draft. But there's just not a lot of help over there in Carolina. And he still has to work on mechanics as well and learn this playbook. So right now this season, if people think they could go into the year with him being a top 12 quarterback, I don't think it happens, because he's not that great passer of the football. I think he'll finish the year with 3,200 to the 3,500 range in passing yards, but I think the interceptions will be high. The running, it'll be all right for Bryce Young, but I just don't trust him this season as a guy you could go in, even in 2 quarterback leagues, and have any confidence that week in and week out he could put up anywhere from 15 to 20 fantasy points even at that. Because like I said, there's not a lot of weapons on that team. I know there'll be ball games where there's garbage time, because the Panthers definitely could be one of the worst teams in the league. But right now, I'm not drafting Bryce Young to be a starter or to really contribute for my fantasy team this season. So this year, if you got high hopes for him, I think he's going to be a bust, and the 5th and final quarterback I think will be a bust this season here is C.J. Stroud of the Houston Texans. Same thing as Bryce Young. He's not an elite passer. He don't have many weapons on the offense. I like Pierce in the backfield, though. Dalton Schultz, he's been pretty decent. But Nico Collins pretty much is your number one wide receiver. Isn't that appealing over there for this Houston Texan team, who a few years ago, obviously, they had a loaded roster, but now it's a rebuild mode. And C.J. Stroud, he's going to have, obviously, his growing pains as well. So pretty much similar season, I believe, Stroud's going to have to a Bryce Young. And this Houston Texan team, they're a team in the next few years that could build up, but right now, they're only going to win probably 4 or 5 ball games at best. So right now, with a lack of weapons and a lot of things he still has to learn on the NFL level. He obviously was an elite prospect, but still a lot of things to work on, tough schedule, and not a great offense. I just don't trust C.J. Stroud as a guy who's going to bring anything for fantasy owners on a consistent basis this season. So I think he's going to be a bust, even though he was the 2nd overall pick in the NFL draft. So that's a few quarterbacks that I think are going to be bust here for the upcoming 2023 fantasy football season.